take a moment to welcome you to the program, and I'm super excited to chat with you about personal development, my friend. Great to see you, and thanks so much for being here.
So excited. Thank you for welcoming me with such enthusiasm.
Absolutely. Now, I want the viewers who are watching this today, Faisal, to get an idea of your personal story, to pull back the curtain on that. And I know that you're an immigrant, my friend, from a war-torn country, and I know that you've faced challenges in your life, including overcoming addiction and deep personal despair, my friend. And I know that today you view yourself as a beacon of hope and inspiration and success, and a real testament of personal fulfillment, my friend. So I'm wondering if you can tell me about your journey and what makes you so fabulous, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Well, I'll let others decide what makes me fabulous. What I'll go into is, and you mentioned a war-torn country, and it's always a reference point because for most people, I'm just doing what people do to be successful, to have a good life and all that stuff. But as I look back, it's not just in my journey, but my parents' journey, because they had to flee. And I was born in Afghanistan. It wasn't me who had to do that. Actually, when I was 3.5, my family had to leave the country because of war, and they literally had to flee into the neighboring country. And it was actually, I'm grateful for my parents to be able to protect us in those times. I have kids, and I don't know how I'd be protecting them in a situation like that. And my journey started there, and just going into a new country where we actually weren't legal, to be honest. We were illegal immigrants, and that was the choice that we had to leave the country or die, pretty much. And what ended up happening was we had to survive under very difficult circumstances, mostly for my parents. But then as I grew up in that environment, we always used to say, like, as we look back, in that environment, everybody was poor. There was nobody had a conception of being rich, or it was not even a dream for people, for most people. So we didn't actually know what was going on. But reflecting back, I remember when we had come to Canada, we were in one of the worst parts of Toronto region, and I remember talking to one of my friends. He was always anxious about being there. He's like, I gotta get out of here. This place is unsafe. And there's so much violent crimes and this stuff. And I'm looking around, I'm like, this feels like heaven compared to where I was. I'm like, what are you talking about? But really, the crux of it that hit me was a few years later as I came here. I didn't realize how much of the things that had gone through, my family had gone through, had been building up inside. And that showed up in the form of drug addiction, depression in my early 20s. To the point where I could have easily gone towards suicide, and I kind of give the credit to God at that point, because I don't know how I came out of that, but in that moment when I was sitting in front of the subway station, I could see that I could go. Life had very little value for me in that moment, and it could have gone either way. But for some reason, there was a part of me, even though a part of me felt completely disconnected. A part of me felt like I didn't want to be here. A part of me felt disconnected from my values, from my faith, from my family, from so many things. But then for some reason, in this next moment, there was a part of me that felt peace, that felt joy. And it was very odd to me. I didn't understand what that was, but that experience shifted my direction. And I remember in the next month, I started to study all sorts of things, from philosophy to psychology, spirituality, history, anything that I could get my hands on to understand what is it that went wrong in the process. Like my parents were able to get us to a really good part of the world. There's opportunity here, so many things, but why am I breaking down everything around me? And through the process, what I learned was I needed to learn a lot. And I spent the next decade or so trying to understand myself, trying to go through a process until I realized about 15 years or so later, and that was through a mentor and a coach who helped me question what I was going towards. And then I realized, you know what, I need to pick a better path, a different path that feels more aligned with me. That's when I jumped into entrepreneurship. which was a challenge on its own. But that's when I realized that, you know what, my journey has just begun. I'm just beginning, and to this day, to be honest, it still feels like I'm just beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. And Faisal, I'm also curious to ask you, based on your personal experience, do you think personal courage or the ability to show personal courage can positively contribute to your personal development? I'm wondering your thoughts there, my friend.
Um, if I understand your question correctly, what I understand is that did courage contribute to my development? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm asking if you think that personal courage or exhibiting personal courage, I guess, how do you define personal courage for you personally? And do you think it can contribute to personal development? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, you remind me of this quote. Let me see if I can remember it fully. I actually share it with my clients a lot. The cave that you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. I love that quote, and which defines courage in a way that, you know what, we'll always be afraid. To this day, I'm afraid of a lot of things. I'm afraid of change, or there's a part of me that's afraid of taking risky steps. There's a part of me that's afraid for my family. But I think courage is knowing that that fear is there, knowing that you feel it fully, knowing that there are risks associated with things, but you also see the other side of it. The other side of it is that, you know what if I did this and this helped me grow? This helped support my family. This served a lot of other people around me. This helped create a model for those that are around me. To me, that has become, this is why I think one of my clients sent this, be bold. This is one of the words that I remind myself a lot. Be bold. It's a reminder for me to every day to show up with courage, even though I'm afraid. And even though I struggle with things, even though to this day there are things that I don't want to do, there are things that I procrastinate on, there are things that I struggle with, but I show up every day, and I think that's half the battle is just showing up and being okay with discomfort, being okay that it's not going to be easy. But that's a value that has definitely helped me move forward, and that's a value that I've learned a lot from other people around me, whether they're my coaches, mentors, or even my clients have helped me see how much courage it takes them to build a family, to show up as a leader, to build an organization, to inspire a community, to move a cause forward. And I always say that that I get inspired by my own clients because they've helped me grow. So
Yeah,
that's what I would say.
yeah, absolutely. And I know, my friends, that you've coached over 2,000 individuals, everything from CEOs to stay-at-home moms, my friend, to multimillionaires. So tell me about learning and the importance of learning and always keeping your mind open to learning. And because, I always say that the day that you stop learning is that the day you die, because it's my belief that no matter how many degrees you have on a wall, you can always learn something from somebody else. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, of course. Actually, that was one of the biggest motivations I had to jump into the coaching world was that I realized pretty quickly that I'm a learner. I want to learn things. I want to spend every day of my life learning and seeking. And I would say I would call myself more of a seeker. That means I'm seeking to know who I am deep down. I'm seeking to learn, understand the world. I'm seeking to understand those around me so I can support them more. I'm seeking to grow and understand why the hell am I here in the middle of a tiny little blue dot in the in a universe that we can't even fathom how large it is. So if you're a seeker, you're always seeking knowledge. You're always seeking skill sets. You are always seeking to understand the world around and within you. And it's contributed immensely to everything that I do. And I agree with you. When you stop learning, you might be physically alive, but there's a part of you that dies every day because there's a part of you that part of us that wants to grow. Whether you want to call it your soul, your core, or whatever. That's why we have such a curiosity towards learning things. All of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And Faisal, I'm also curious to ask you about the concept of resilient vulnerability, and I'll qualify it this way. I always tell people that there's strength in being vulnerable, and I often use myself as an example. So, Faisal, when I was 9 years old, I found out that I wouldn't be able to walk for the duration of my life because of the severity of the cerebral palsy I am born with. I was born with, and I now use my own story of perseverance to inspire people to maximize their own level of potential. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us to sort of tap into our resilient vulnerability. So if I ask you to qualify, what do you think resilient vulnerability is, and how do you think it can help us in our professional journey? What are your thoughts there?
Thank you for sharing that, and I want to celebrate you for having that resiliency to move forward and inspire others who might be in your situation or who might be struggling with life in one way or another. But you've used that as a way to inspire others, which is actually inspiring for me to hear. So thank you for sharing that. And I would say, and this is something I get my clients to think about a lot, that your story holds the key to your growth and to your potential. And we all have a story. We all have something we struggled with. And I struggled with a lot of things. And to this day, I struggle with. I've struggled with depression. I still have a lot of traumas internally that I've gone through. Physical abuse. I've gone through emotional abuse. I've gone through all sorts of chaos that most human beings shouldn't go through. And there are not just me, millions of other people around the world go through that stuff. So I'm not special in that sense. But what I've learned is, as I've reflected back on my life, I've realized that, you know what? When you reflect back on those moments, whether you developed a physical challenge or you developed an emotional or a spiritual challenge, there was a key in there that helped you grow. So how does that show up for me? So I struggled a lot, even as a child. I didn't realize that until I started going into this, where I needed to understand the world, and I was asking questions, and I needed to understand things like my religion, the people around me, my culture. And I was the kind of person who was always asking questions, but I realized very quickly people didn't like questions. I got a lot of backlash, and it kind of, the more I got a backlash around that, the more I kind of reserved, went backwards. And then I went into my own little space, which gave me other strengths, but it also helped me develop this curiosity to understand the world better, to bring people together in a space where it can be safe for people to ask questions, to not be judged, to not be criticized, to not be dismissed. So that, just that part of my story, as I've learned it more, the more I do things, the more I create spaces like that. That's why I take my clients to in-person events. That's why I create online events. That's why I help them show up better in their families. That's why I help them consider and think about what is the impact of their actions, their thoughts, their energy on the people around them. And again, none of this means I'm perfect or they will be perfect. It just means that for me, going back to what you asked, and the vulnerable resiliency is to understand your story and recognize that you've gone through stuff. You've gone through stuff, and it's important to notice what that is, and it's important to share, because I guarantee you somebody else has gone through that process just like you're sharing. And that requires courage as well. And what that also does is that vulnerability also helps other people understand that there's a strength hiding behind that seemingly weakness that you might have. And for me, I looked at my personality being so reserved in my own corner as a weakness, but actually that gave me the ability to think deeper than most people. And I never and now it helps me help a lot of leaders. At the time, I was miserable about that. Now it's actually helping me serve a lot of people.
Yeah, it's important to grow beyond your comfort zone, isn't it?
It sure is. I mean, there is no growth beyond within your comfort zone. That's a place to relax. That's a great place to be. But if you really want to grow, you'll be uncomfortable.
Absolutely. And well, my friend, I know that you've been a certified high performance coach since 2015 and a business coach since 2022. And I'm curious to ask you about your philosophy when it comes to forming new relationships and strengthening existing ones, my friend. So, what's your philosophy in forming relationships, whether they be professional or personal? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, great question. I love that. And actually, it's very interesting. So, a lot of people that come to me, most of my clients are entrepreneurs, they're business owners. And almost always they will come to me because they think they have a business problem. But here's what happens when we go through a session, whether it's in a group setting or one-on-one setting, it almost always, I'd say 95% plus of the time, they realize that it's a relationship challenge. And same thing with me. The hardest part of my life is in the relationship world. It's not in my business. It's not in trying to build systems around business. It's not in trying to create processes and all that stuff. It's actually relationship. So here's how I look at relationships. I look at first of all, my philosophy around relationship is build long-term relationships, not short-term. Don't build just transactional relationships for the sake of taking something from a person or do a give and take short-term relationship, go forward. Why? Because I've actually learned this being a coach, because the more I've talked to people, the more I've realized about this. It's hard to build relationships. It takes a lot to trust. It takes a lot to repair. It's actually very easy to break down a relationship, whether it's in your family, with your friends, or anybody. But it's actually it takes a while to build trust in relationships. It takes a while to be open and vulnerable in a relationship. And I would rather, and it takes, and I cherish relationships where I have fun, I feel connected, we can go much deeper, we can do things together, we have a common path forward, whether that's with my wife or my business partners, or even with some of my friends. But what I focus on is long-term relationships, and I look at it the same way in business. So one of the questions that I ask myself, even if I got on a call with a potential client, would I want to work with this person for the next decade? Like, that's a question in the back of my mind. Would I want to work with this person, whether I'm collaborating or I'm selling something to them, or they're selling something to me, whatever the nature of that relationship is, would I want to be in that relationship with them for the next decade? Now, I don't know if I will be or not. That's besides the point, but that gives me a kind of a check. Do I feel aligned with this person? And if I feel aligned, then my focus is to dedicate to that person, dedicate my time and energy to that person. And again, of course, that's their choice as well on the other side. But and once you dedicate, then there's a follow-up process in there, whether that's with a client, a collaborator, or with my family members around me. Like, what is my contribution in their life? Do I check in? Do I follow up? Do I support them? Do I show up consistently? If I can't, then that's a problem. So, and I look at everything is about relationship. If you don't know how to build relationships, you're going to struggle in business. I did in the beginning. I struggled with building personal relationships because I stayed in my own corner, but I had to learn all of that. I think it's a skill set as well. So I consistently work on that myself. And actually, that's one of the areas I focus on with my clients too.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the ways to do that is I know that you've created coaching mastermind groups and connection groups as well. So I'm curious to ask you about forming the powerful bond of connection and how building what I call social capital is important both in business and in life. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah, and so I mean the reason why I created both of the communities, I understood this one thing. I used to work with, for the first, I think almost 5 years of doing this work, I did one-on-one coaching with people. So it was one-on-one online or in person, mostly online, on a call. I still do that. I do it much less than before, but I still do the one-on-one piece. What I realized was, let's say a client went through a process. They had a complete shift in their perspective and they are excited. They want to create a new path forward. And here's what happens. They go back into their life, and about 2 weeks later, when they come back to the next coaching session with me, something broke down. And I would ask him, what happened? You were so excited to move forward and go in this direction. You had a new realization. And they didn't even know what was going on. And then as we dug in deeper, it's like they felt disconnected. They felt not supported. They felt like they were working against the current. They felt like they were in an environment where they weren't able to move forward. There was a lot of resistance. And they didn't think much of it. A lot of times they will be like, oh, I'm just lazy, or I didn't take action, or I'm not taking ownership, something like that. To them, they don't even acknowledge it that way. But what I realized very quickly, you know what? They don't have the right environment. They go back to a family or a group of friends who might be completely discouraging towards them. And what they didn't have, going back to what you were saying, if I understand what you're saying, they didn't have a good social capital. Now, that doesn't mean they shouldn't improve on the relationships they have, but what I realized quickly is like, what if I built a community around them while they're growing? So that's why I started doing more groups. I started doing more in-person events to bring these amazing people together. Not only they would get powerful realizations in the one-on-one, now it's being reinforced in those groups. Their learnings were reinforced and they met, and it goes back to our need as human beings. We're a social species. We need encouragement, we need support, we need understanding, we need to understand that other people around us get us. And then what happens out in the world, when you're going out in the world, what builds your business? For example, if you're trying to build a business, and I'm not the best at marketing, but I've built a very successful business, not because I know a lot of marketing, but because I've built a lot of really good relationships. I have a high social capital. My network is very good. That means I've served a lot of people in my network and they've referred me to other people. I've collaborated with a bunch of people, and that's built relationships, but it's given me a reputation. And that's why they say in business, your reputation precedes you. When you go there, how are people looking at you, perceiving you? How have you served other people? And that's how you slowly start to build social capital. And your personal life is the same. You build a reputation in your life. And if you're struggling with relationships, there are two ways you can go about it. You can either deal with it, which most people run away from, and it's very hard, and I get it. Or you can say, do I need a little bit of space to make sense of my own path before I deal with this? You can do either one, but most people don't do either one. They're just miserable with the people around them. And what happens is it creates more tension, disconnection, and they go through life feeling unhappy, miserable, disconnected. I did. My hand is up first. But as I became aware of it, I started to realize, what kind of people do I want around me that would inspire me, connect with me? And I still have people that don't, and I've worked on those relationships, but I've learned to create more people around me that not only do I benefit them, but they benefit me as well. And I've consistently learned to grow my network around me. That's what has helped me grow my business. That's what has learned me to become a better leader in my own community and family and grow. And I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely. And Faisal, what do you think it means to push beyond our personal or professional capacity? And what I mean by that is, what do you think it means to excel past the level that we think is our ceiling, both in our professional and personal life? What are your thoughts there?
So let me understand this question better. So are you saying, what does it mean to go beyond our current level of success or ability? Is that what you're asking?
Essentially, yeah.
So here's the thing, and it comes down to human potential, and this is what actually my goal for myself, even when I got into this, is what is my potential? What did I come here to do? And whenever I think of potential, I also think about a sense of purpose, because a lot of people, for example, they push themselves and they do a lot of hard things out in the world for the sake of doing things. So people will go run marathons, they will do cold plunges, all sorts of, nothing wrong with any of that stuff. But the problem is that they don't know what is the heart that is important to them. They don't have a sense of direction and purpose. And one of the things that I help my clients think about more is, how do they look at their purpose? How do they look at why they're here? And part of that is just the journey that you're on. You figure it out as you go. Part of that is asking the question. And everybody's answer is going to be different. I can't sit here and tell you what your purpose is. But what is important is for you to reflect on it and go through a process for you to see the questions are more important in finding your purpose. And then your potential becomes, as I go towards that purpose, I'm pushing myself beyond the comfort of who I think I am, beyond the comfort of what other people have told me I am, beyond the comfort of the regular things that I do. And then all of a sudden you start to see that there's another identity that's starting to develop. And that identity starts to show up not only as a better version of you, but you start to serve other people around you. And I think that becomes the path towards your potential. And I don't know what full potential is, because I don't know. I don't think I've reached that. Most people don't know what that is, but none of us know what that full potential is. But I know it's connected to your sense of purpose and direction. So don't do hard things towards any random direction. Do things towards the thing that matters to you. And the clue to your purpose is actually your story. If you understand your story well, you will actually go towards a better and a path that feels aligned with you. If you don't understand it, you will just copy somebody else's path and you will think that that's your path.
Yeah, and Faisal, I'm also curious to ask you about changing, behavioral patterns of expectations. I always tell people that it's important to set our own baseline of personal or fundamental personal expectations before we can rise to the level of creating or meeting the expectations that we get from sort of external forces. So how do you think we can work to better sort of change our behavioral patterns of our own expectations of our abilities?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's actually one of the other things that I focus on. One of the things that I do with most of my clients that come in, I want to understand a lot of people have goals. Like if you're in the world of personal development, you usually are aware of goals. But I would say very few people have vision for their life. And that's very different from when people say, I have a vision board. So people have vision boards, but they kind of slap on a bunch of stuff. I want this, I want that. It's all about what they want. And they haven't thought that much about it. It's just, if I put it there, I'm going to get it. That's not what a vision is. So uh, when I ask people, what is your vision? A lot of times they tell me their goals, but that's not what I'm asking. What I'm asking them, when you look to the future, what do you see? Not the things that you're going to have, but who are you becoming in that process? Who is the person that you're becoming, and that world that you're creating around you? Why is that so important to you? And that world has your relationships in it. It's the identity that you're creating as a leader. It's the things that are in there. It's the why behind it. It's all that stuff. When you have a vision, all of a sudden your mind starts to realize, you know what? There's a direction here. There's a sense of mission and purpose here. And all of a sudden you start to push yourself beyond your comfort zone, but also now your expectations of what you do changes, because your expectations of yourself is connected to the person you're growing to be, rather than whatever expectations that you have. And this is why some Tony Robbins would say something like, create expectations so high for yourself, standards so high for yourself, that other people's expectations don't matter. Something to that degree, that a lot of people are concerned about other people's expectations, but they don't have much of a standard, and the standards are connected to copying other people. But what if you had a vision for a better path that you want? And everybody has it, but they just haven't deeply thought about it. They haven't explored it. Once you explore it, all of a sudden your expectations of yourself completely change. Now you're like, you know what? I need to grow. I need to become that person that I see, because you feel connected to that. And that might mean that, you know what? I'm not gonna eat this thing that's gonna ruin my body. I'm not gonna do this thing that would hurt my relationships. I'm not gonna do this thing that will ruin my path forward. You're gonna start to do more and more things that would better you as a person, and you're gonna start to build an environment around your relationships around you that will help you. Now, again, my caveat is always, you're not gonna become perfect. You're gonna make a lot of mistakes. I make mistakes every day. I screw up every day. But over the long run, you start to grow a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And my friend, I'm also curious to ask you why mentoring others is important to you. And do you think there's a difference between high achievers versus high performers? High performers. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
So I'm here because somebody coached me and mentored me. Like I wouldn't have been here. I did have a realization in the beginning, and like I said, it was by God's grace that I got out of that. But then as I was seeking my path forward, it was actually my coaches and mentors that helped me, ask me questions, that challenged me, that helped me understand that there's a better path forward. They saw in me what I couldn't see in myself yet. They saw a part of my potential, and they encouraged me. So at times I didn't even understand, what the hell did they see in me? I don't see that in myself. And so I grew because of my coaches and mentors. I didn't come out of thin air. In fact, today I did a session on contribution, the human drive for contribution with my clients, and I walked them through a visualization throughout their whole life, from the time that they can remember, early childhood, to the rest of their life. Almost all of them, they're like, you know what? I didn't realize how much of an impact this person had, that person had, the other person. Now, a lot of times it might not be an official coach or a mentor, but your parent might have shown up as a mentor. Your friend might have shown up as that. A stranger might have impacted you in ways, inspired you in a way that you never thought about. So for me, the reason why coaching and mentorship is so important, that it's had a huge impact on me. The past decade of my life is a completely different life, and I know I wouldn't have been here had it not been for my mentors and coaches. There's no way. I don't see that, or at least this fast, I wouldn't have been here. And second, let me see if I can remember this. There was a second piece of that question.
Yeah, I was just curious to ask you if you think there's a difference between high achievers
Right.
versus high performers.
High achievers, very so. The term high performer, we use it in the certified high performance process. It's so Certified High Performance Institute is the entity that trained me, which is the head of it is Brendan Burchard. He trained me on that. And the way we define that, a high performer is somebody that actually consistently grows over the long term, sustainably. It doesn't matter in their professional life, in their personal life, and who they are, but they're sustainably and consistently growing over the long term. Now, high achievers there are a lot of high achievers who will actually they offset and they go really fast for like 5 years. For example, I just recently talked to somebody who I had done a group. He was part of one of my group sessions about 5 years ago. And then I met him 5 years later. He had gotten a lot out of it. He reached out to me and I told him, like, I'm happy to do a session with you. We did it. And he made a lot of progress in his business. But then what I didn't realize was when he started opening up, he realized his marriage was at the brink of divorce. His daughter's health was breaking down. He was in complete depression. He didn't know what to do. But on the surface, he looked like a very successful person. That is a high achiever. He did a lot. He moved to another failed family in the process. So my definition is, how can I take that high achiever? How can I help them go through a process to help them understand how they can sustainably grow themselves, their business, their contributions, their family, other people around them. So high achievers tend to be short term. And I'll give you Warren Buffett's quote around this. Somebody asked him, he had a third business partner outside of Charlie Munger, and asked him, what happened to that third business, the other business, I forget his name, the other business partner you had this in the early days? He's like, he said he was in too much of a hurry to make money. And he ended up buying his shares, and he was just as brilliant as Warren Buffett, but he was rushing the process. And most high achievers do that.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, my friend. And to follow up on that, I'm curious to ask you your perspective on taking ownership and personal accountability in life and developing sort of what I call an optimal relationship with success. What do you think is the key there, my friend?
Yeah, and that's one of those things that has kind of, I've grown into that the past, I'd say especially the past 5 years. And the way I look at personal accountability and ownership is that, and think about it this way, a lot of people look back in their path, in their story, and they see that, you know what, I was born in a place where I was disadvantaged. For example, I was born in a war-torn country and my parents had to go to another place. And they're like, you know what, I didn't have the right environment for me to optimally grow. And then they carry that story with themselves and they're like, you know what, I don't know what to do about that. But the ownership in that process would be, you know what, I've gone through that process. I've gone through a lot of pain. Now, what is it that I gained from that I can use right now? Not that I was a victim of that environment, but what if I'm here right now, still alive, still kicking? What is it that I gained through that process that I can use? And how can I take responsibility for that? Instead of looking back and saying, you know what, I can't do anything because I've come from this broken family, I've come from this broken culture, I've come from this. I recognize all of that. And we're all victims of one problem or another. But then ownership becomes, you know what, I'm an accumulation of a lot of things. My genetics, maybe my spiritual path, my soul, my environment. But here I am standing on this tiny little blue dot. Why the hell am I here? Where am I going? And what can I do with the resources and abilities that I have? And what can I build on? And as soon as you take ownership, here's what ends up happening. You start to seek things like, let me learn what my path is. Let me learn what I'm able to do. Let me learn some skill sets. Let me build a network, the social capital. You start to do that slowly. All of a sudden, you start to realize, holy shit, I'm unstoppable. It doesn't matter what I've come through. It doesn't matter what trauma I've gone through. It doesn't matter what I was in. But I can do this now. I have the gift of moving forward. And that's what I would take personal ownership. And this is a reminder for me every day, no matter how hard life can be, and it can be for a lot of people, including me to this day. And no matter how challenging things can be, can I show up every day and ask myself, what can I do here despite all these challenges? What can I build here? Who can I connect with? Who can I serve? Who can I support? What can I do to grow out of this? And I think we have a mind and a heart that's incredibly powerful. We come from a lineage of human beings who have survived catastrophes most of us can't imagine. So when we say that, you know what, I can't do something, we don't actually understand our history as human beings. Go study the history of human beings and you'll understand that human beings have persevered through a lot. Your culture has persevered through a lot. Your parents have persevered through a lot. The fact that you're here is a testament. You're standing on the shoulders of a giant with gifts that you don't even know you have.
Yeah, and I know that for you personally and professionally, you're on a mission to help yourself and others lead a life worth living while also supporting them through a journey of continual growth, my friend. So, talk to me about your philosophy behind continued growth and adaptability and how others can adopt the same mindset.
Yeah. I would say, if I were to give any advice, is figure out the mindset that helps you. And if what I'm gonna share inspires you, take it and practice and test it out. Don't just take it just because I'm sharing or anybody else is sharing it. Test it out in the world. And for me, the way I look at a life worth living, a life where you're adaptable. First of all, there's a fact here. As human beings, we're incredibly adaptable. All you have to do is study human beings. We have populated every corner of the world, and pretty soon we're going to populate the stars, other planets too. So the fact that we've done that as a human, it's built into your genetic material for you to survive and thrive and grow and learn and be curious. That's a fact of being a human being. Now, people will vary depending on how much they will use that from there. But the way I look at it is that I already have all the gifts that I need. So then where am I going towards? And this is where a personal choice comes in a lot of times is what is my life going to be about? And like I said in the beginning, the way I look at my life is that I'm a seeker. I want to understand myself and the world around me. I want to understand other people. Why do I want to understand other people? Why do I want to understand myself in the world? Because I'm here. Why the hell am I here? What are the chances of us being born in a tiny little blue dot in the middle of billions of galaxies, and you're here, and it's a miracle that we know that we're here, and doesn't that amaze you? To me, that's incredible. And when I look at it, I'm like, you know what? Why the hell am I here? And that sets me on a path towards understanding who I am and helping other people understand themselves. Because when we're doing all that stuff, we naturally become resilient, we become adaptable, we start to grow as human beings, and we start to support other people to grow as well, because that is incredibly important. And then as a species, we're also responsible for this earth. We've pretty much taken over every part of the, and for me, my goal is, and what I said, the life worth living is to be on that seeking path, to grow and help other people around you grow. Because what's the alternative? Sit here and worry about what's going to happen. Sit here and look back and feel bad for yourself. Sit here and look back at feeling like a victim. I don't want that alternative, even if that's true.
Yeah, and Faisal, if I gave you a stopwatch to revisit any aspect of your life, both personal or professional. And I told you I'd give you the stopwatch only to go back to self-reflect in hopes of growing. I'm curious, what part of your life do you think you would go back to and why?
You know what? I feel like when I jumped into entrepreneurship, the first 2 to 3 years, I was struggling a lot. I didn't understand business, and I was figuring out my path forward. I was trying to figure out what my path will be, my purpose will be, my potential is. I was building new relationships, but I feel like I rushed the process. And the reason why I rushed the process because there was a lot of pain involved in the process. There was a lot of discomfort. I would actually go back to that and I reflect a lot on that and slow down the time to understand, you know what, that's a monumental moment in your life. The next decade is going to completely transform you, your family, and everybody around you. Uh, Pause and rejoice, even though there's discomfort around you. That's what comes to mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Faisal, I know we both live in Canada and we have an upcoming election, and the U.S. Just had theirs. And I'm curious for anyone that was unhappy with what happened on Tuesday night or anything that happened to their life that makes them uncomfortable. How do we process that to come uh, through the other side of it, my friend? So, how do we process being uncomfortable or uncomfortability to grow as people? What are your thoughts there?
I would tell them to understand the world a little bit better. Because if you're emotionally affected by what happened in the election process, whether Trump won or the other one won, then you actually don't understand the system very well. It doesn't actually matter which one of them win. Some policies at the high level will change and it will benefit some people. But no matter which candidate wins, they're going to create positive and negative. That will be guaranteed. And people look at elections and these kind of things as like when they watch sports, like whose team won. But the reality is that's not going to change your life all that much. What's going to happen is you're going to still wake up the next day, do the things that you do every day, show up for your family, show up for your work, show up for your business. That has nothing to do with you. Yeah, go do your voting, do all your stuff. But once somebody is there, let them do their job. That's way bigger than you. What we need to do is sit there and ask ourselves, what am I doing to do my part? Don't expect politicians, don't expect businesses to solve your problems. Most people who look to elections and look for them to solve their problems, they don't understand that they have a lot of control over their own life. They have a lot of say in their own life. And usually the reason why their life breaks down is because they're not paying close attention to their life. Where is the place you're not taking responsibility? Where is the place that you're not being intentional? Where is the place you're being reactive? Where is the place you're supposed to do something, but you're not doing, running away from it? Where is a relationship that you're not fixing? People worry about relationships at a country level, a global level. Think about your relationship with your siblings. Think about your relationship with your spouse, your friends. Are you working on that? Because one of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite philosophers, Manly Palmer Hall, is family is the initiation into the world. And if the people around you are doing well, if other people do their part, eventually we create a better world and we'll create better leaders as well in the process. So I would say understand the world better and pay attention to your own life. The solutions that you're looking for in the political sphere is actually with you, not with them. And that takes a level of honesty that most people are uncomfortable with facing.
Yeah, and my friend, I'm going to ask you this second to last question because, I spend a lot of time talking to businesses about the importance of fostering inclusion and acceptance in the workplace of folks with disabilities. And we actually just finished National Disability Employment Awareness Month in October. So, how do you view the concept of inclusion in organizations, and how do you think we can foster more of it? What are your thoughts there?
To be honest, I really believe we definitely have to have here's how I'll step back. I think every member of the world, every member of our families, our communities, like even at the smallest level, I think we need to know how they can have a good quality of life. And one of the aspects of that is for them to be useful. Like human beings like our sense of happiness is connected to being useful, showing up, feeling fulfilled, building relationships. I don't care if somebody's disabled or not disabled, or somebody has challenges or not. We all have challenges, but I think we need to open up our communities, our workplaces for people to have a place. But I also think that we need to understand it in terms of skill sets and merit as well. Give give people knowledge, give people skill sets, give people an environment where they can grow in based on their own capacity. Help them grow. And I think that's primarily up to the people in their own families and their teachers. And yes, policymakers do have a say in it, businesses do have a say in it, but I think we need to start from bottom up. And yes, we need to have policies out in the workplace. Are we giving opportunities to people who have the ability to support, to serve, for people to contribute? And I think we're seeing more and more of people who have who come from different backgrounds, who have different abilities, but they're able to show up. And as long as you can do the job, as long as you can be a supporting factor in that role, and you can contribute, I think we should give people every opportunity that we can. Because as soon as you and this is something that I've learned even from my clients, like as soon as you, and we have data around this idea of retirement. Let's take retirement. When for example, when men retire, especially men, but it can apply to both sides, and they don't have a sense of purpose, the first year or so might be exciting, but after that, their health declines. Why does their health decline? The health declines because they don't have a sense of direction, purpose. They're not useful out in the world. So it doesn't matter what people are doing. We need to find use and contribution to the best of people's abilities. And we need to do that for every member of every family, literally. And that's a hard job at a global level or at a country level, but just the awareness around that can help people think, okay, how can I put this person to good use for themselves and those around them? How can I put them in environments where they get to grow and contribute and do other things? I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Faisal, my final question has to do with legacy, my friend, and how you want your own personal and professional legacy to be defined. What is your thoughts there, my friend?
I've thought about this a lot. I'd say the biggest thing, I actually don't care if people remember me or not. That's not the point. I look at legacy as, did I leave the world a little bit better than I came into it? Or did I leave my family a little bit better than when I came into it? Did I leave my community a little bit better than I came into it? And if I leave this place having left it a little bit better than when I came into it, I'm at peace. And I feel like I've done that. And this is why I continue to do a lot of that stuff, because and I tell people around me, like if I left this, like if I died today, I'm at peace. I've done my part. I don't have any regrets. And I'll continue to do that because that brings me joy, that brings me fulfillment, that gives me a sense of purpose and connection. But my legacy would be is that if I can help people understand that, you know what, continue to grow, continue to learn, continue to help people around you. And I hope my life is a model for that for anybody around me. I hope they see an aspect of that in my life, that every day I wake up to grow. Every day I wake up to be a better person, a better leader, a better parent, a better father, a better husband. I try. I'm not always successful, but I try every day. And if I can pass that on to anybody around me, whether it's people listening here or people in my family, that brings me a lot of peace.
Yeah, absolutely. And my friend, if people want to get connected with you, what's the best way they can do that? Because I know that you have a podcast and a lot of other things going on. So what's the best way that people can connect with you, my friend?
Well, my name should be on the screen. So my website is literally my first and last name, FaisalEnsaun.com. And there's a gift there on my website as well. You can download that PDF. That will help you go a little bit deeper into some of the things that I teach, walk you through. and it'll give you some other resources. And my podcast, you'll be able to see there too. So all things for me will be on faisalensaun.com.
Well, I appreciate that, my friend, and I want to thank you for being here to engage in conversation about leadership and personal development, my friend. Your work in the space and time on my behalf is most appreciated, and I want to thank you for being here this afternoon.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I appreciate you giving me the space to be able to share what is important to me in my heart, and for me to be able to hopefully serve those who are listening.